All right. Ike, as a first generation Nigerian American, you have seen firsthand how family and culture show up in money decisions. And I think that's something a lot of financial advisors miss. They focus on the numbers, but they ignore the meaning behind the numbers. How do family, faith, and culture change the way you help clients make financial decisions?
Yeah, I think it's a major factor. Planning is personal. It's extremely personal. And like you mentioned, family situation or family of origin, faith, culture, these things all matter. Like, for example, we are both of Nigerian descent, and a large part of our culture, especially being Nigerians abroad in the US, is maybe sending back money to help our families, our uncles, or aunts, or siblings back home, or parents. And I think that other people, that's not a common line item in their budget, right? And that's just something that you have to think about. You might be solving for different goals. Like, what is my retirement? But oh, let me also think about my family abroad. Are they okay? Can I send them a little bit each month? Or having to plan. So there's a lot of things that come up, and that's just a Nigerian example and a small one.
Welcome to Today, Plan Tomorrow. I am Auntie Foluke with Hand in Hand Consulting, and this is where we talk about money, not just the math, but the mindset, the habits, and the heart behind how we steward what we've been given. Today, I'm sitting with Ike Egwuonwu, a wealth advisor who helps affluent families and business owners bring structure to their financial decisions as they approach retirement. We're talking about tool. Money is a tool, not the goal. Truth, simple, is often better than fully optimized. Trust, family, faith, and culture matter in money decisions. If you're navigating the complexity of wealth and want your money to support the life you actually want to live, this is for you. Ike, welcome to the podcast. Let's talk about tool, truth, and trust. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
All right, thank you for having me. My name is Ike Egwuonwu, but I go back. I'm a wealth advisor. As you mentioned, I do work with affluent families and business owners who are approaching retirement, and they want more clarity around their finances. So I help them make thoughtful, smart decisions around things like retirement, taxes, and long-term planning, just to make sure that their money supports the life that they actually want. And the question that usually follows that up is, what does that actually mean? Usually it means someone has done a very good job or they've been fortunate enough to build wealth. But now that means there's a lot of moving parts. Like, you have retirement decisions to make, like Social Security. What about my health care, Medicare? There's tax questions. There's business planning. Like, how much is my business worth? Can I sell it? Am I even ready to sell? Family responsibilities. There's legacy goals. And my job is to simplify all of that and turn it into a clear plan that all family members understand.
That sounds awesome. And it sounds like you're enjoying it, but something must have happened before you got here. And I would love to hear your story. What was the journey like becoming a financial advisor?
The journey was not very straight. I think the first career I remember ever wanting was to become a police officer. And then a little bit of Law and Order SVU turned that into detective. And then my family told me aim higher, and it became
Nigerian family,
FBI
right?
or CIA. Nigerian family. It's a doctor, engineer, lawyer. And I was like, okay, what about FBI or CIA? And I've always been stubborn. Like, I've always been a person who knows what he wants, and I'm not budging because someone had a different opinion. Uh, but over time, I was in a Sunday school class back in church, and my teacher was teaching on the parable of the talents.
Mm.
So if you don't know that story, a master gave each of his servants, let's just say, a different amount of money. but they were called talents. And my Sunday school teacher did that with us. He gave each of us different amounts of money, but he gave me the least amount of money in our entire Sunday school class. But at the end of that time period he gave us to see how we stewarded that money, I ended up with the most amount of money. And that's something that I learned a lesson about myself. I didn't know I was entrepreneurial at that time. And I found out I was. I ended up creating a candy empire. I had had my mom start me off at 99-cent store because I had the least amount of money. Eventually, I was going to Costco wholesale,
Oh,
and I had people selling for me at school, and I have the numbers down of what exactly they should owe me at the end of each day, and like, and I was like, if I could do this in a legal capacity, what would this become? That's what made me turn my head away from law enforcement. I was like, okay, well, let's see what this business is talking about. I've heard about this business major. Um, so I go to college and I study business, and I meet upperclassmen who are already landing jobs or had offers secured before they started their senior year of college. And I was like, oh, I need to do that too. But what was popular at the time was these big four accounting firms, management consulting, and let's just all the positions on Wall Street, investment banking, private equity, sales, like all these things. And so I was just gunning for these. Just, all right, I'm a business major, finance focus. This is the things I need to do. I didn't even think about what I do now about wealth management and financial planning and financial advisory. But I was very curious about money from a young age. Just going to friends' houses for play dates and seeing that I lived in apartments, but we used to own two houses. Why do I live in an apartment now? I go to friends' houses. They have wider streets. They live in homes. I just had all these questions like, why do they have that, but we don't? Why does my neighborhood look like this and theirs looks like that? So I read every personal finance book I can get my hands on, and I stumbled upon the podcast and professionals that came to career fairs. And next thing you know, I'm like narrow focus. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go find a company and become a financial planner,
mm.
and it's history from there.
It sounds like you had your own personal story, personal experience for why money actually matters. Not everybody does. Some people just want to make money, but you seem like you actually want to impact people. Why does it matter so much to you?
Yeah, there's a deeper level of impact there as well. Like I would say, my first client was my mother. My parents came to the U.S. from Nigeria before I was born, and a lot of people don't know this is my mom was already a registered nurse in Nigeria, but the U.S. didn't accept her education, so she
Mm,
had to restart. So we had to restart. I remember we were in a studio apartment, and then we went upgraded slowly, and we got a house. And but I would say my mom still didn't. I wouldn't say she was financially savvy. I think they stumbled into some good decisions. That's how we ended up with two homes. But there was a lot of mistakes along the way, and also trusting the wrong people. There's a very great mistrust of financial advisors in our
mm,
communities, and I can honestly say, unfortunately, for good reason. There are all of these. There's almost like predatory pyramid schemes and multi-level marketing things targeting our communities, and everyone thinks financial advisors is only selling insurance to people who don't need it, or selling annuities and things like that. But I think my mom fell for a lot of that, and I'm just glad that I was able to learn what I know in time with a good decade before her retirement to be able to make some moves. But not everyone gets that opportunity.
Not everybody has a son that's a financial advisor. That's awesome. So now you get to help a whole bunch of other people and their sons and daughters to manage money even better, manage their wealth better. So you mentioned the affluent and the wealthy. Who who is that? How do you describe that? Because not everybody understands what's affluent and not everybody understands what is qualified for wealthy.
Yeah, what I would categorize that as, to keep it simple, is of households that have in excess of $1 million of investable assets. So that would mean money that you can hand over to a financial, not hand over, but a financial advisor can invest those assets on your behalf and help you make decisions and planning decisions. But why does this matter? I think at that level, affluent families and business owners, there's a lot more moving parts, right? You're It could be multi-generational planning. We have clients that, let's say there's like, all right, here's 20 million. What do I need to do? These are the things that I want to accomplish. How best should I go about that? Or you have clients that are just like, I hate taxes with my every ounce of being, and that's all they care about. And you have to look at, okay, let's bring all the tax strategies out. There's some clients who are like, I don't want to invest in anything that supports war. I don't want to invest in anything that is. So you get a wide gamut of people, right? Um, but at the end of the day, the goal is, it varies for client, but a lot of times it's how can we make sure these assets last for their lifetime and for any of their goals that exceed their lifetime. That could be providing for their children. That could be charitable intent, right? People start foundations, all kinds of things. So I would say it's a real puzzle, and it's really fun. Like I told you, one of my childhood dreams was become a detective, and I feel like I'm halfway there because I feel like I have to solve and investigate people's financial history and all the documents and sort through it and paint a picture of where they are now and where they want to be and what changes need to be made, if any.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's drastic, and that's not always a fun conversation.
That is very, very good to know because wealth is not the same for everyone. And I know that when we talk about money, it can be extremely personal, right?
Mhm.
So when it comes to dealing with money, I believe you see it in ways that others don't necessarily see it. How would you describe money and what it is and how it's used?
Yeah, I firmly believe that money is a tool, and not the goal. I think there's a rise in people viewing money as the goal, and they don't know what to do with it when they've reached that goal.
Yeah.
Or as human nature tends to be, the goal just keeps growing, so you
The
never really
bar
reach it.
goes
Okay,
higher.
the bar keeps going higher. You hit that goal, so you make a new goal. But I just think money matters because of what it allows people to do, and not just how much they have. There's a rise in things like and I'm not disparaging them, but there's a rise of things like the FIRE community, financial independence, retire early, where they focus so much on the goal of reaching their financial independence number that they sacrifice everything. No more fun, no more eating out, no more travel, no more like. I think we have to remember it's a tool. We don't want to warp. I do think it's important to be a good financial steward, but we we can go to dangerous territories when we go for relentless pursuit of it as a goal.
Yeah. I know, in the Bible, I love the story of Solomon. Absolutely awesome. I am starting to see that some people want to be as wealthy as Solomon. You will never be because God said he will be the richest man. Like that's just don't strive for that bar. When calculate inflation and all that stuff, that's not exactly a goal to, try to reach for. But what very few people realize is that Solomon sacrificed so much so that at the end of his life, he no longer had a relationship with God, not to the extent that when he started, right? As when he started. So to see money as a tool, but not the goal, because what happens when you reach the goal, like Solomon did, and he was the absolute wealthiest man, everything was made of gold. And then what?
Mhm.
So how do you help your clients navigate the then what?
I think a lot of people have never given that chance or moment to dream, to ideate, to think. Like everyone knows you should save your money. Everyone knows, or I hope they know, you should invest your money as well. Um, but I think too many people. I've had this conversation with clients, and they have no idea. It's almost as if they've never been given the permission to dream. And I get it. There are plenty of valid reasons for that. A lot of clients are children of the Great Depression, right? Why would you dream when you have what you have. Everyone's struggling, right? You saw banks fail. Why would you trust things? Like, I just think there are plenty of valid reasons for people. I would say it's trauma. It's a clear response. But I do think I love that in the profession I'm in, we can give people a chance to take the time. You have an hour with me. Let's sit down. There's nothing else we need to talk about. What would that look like to you? What are your money dollars? Some people say. Do you want to, would flying first class really bring joy to you? Okay, your kids are struggling. Do you want to help them buy a house? Do you want to pay for the vacation and just bring them with you? I think we often get, and I think we're in a privileged position to see all the cool things some of our clients are doing with their families and with their communities. And I can bring some of those ideas I've seen clients do to clients that have never dreamed. And I
Mm,
think that it's honestly very transformative.
yeah. I feel that in if biblical, right, stewardship, um, people tend to pick one of the 4 things to do with money, and they run really hard with it. One thing being to earn it, and they earn a lot of it. And I love your story about, creating a candy empire. Not only do you earn it, but then you teach other people how to sell for you, and now you've got all these different businesses, and you're just making more money, which is great. But then there's also that desire, that need actually to give it, whether it's to a church, a charity, give it to other people who are in need. And then there's the desire to actually spend it and enjoy it, flying first class, like you said. And enjoying it may mean having a great vacation and you can cover everybody and just watch them have a good time, knowing that there's no debt to pay later, right? Nobody had to put this on a credit card. They simply had to show up and have fun. And those are great things to do with money. And then, of course, the investing it and saving for the future. So too often people lean into one of those things or two of those things really, really, really hard. So balancing it can be rather tricky. So how do you, or what do you even say about the truth of what to do with money? It's a tool you mentioned, but then what is the honest to God way of managing?
Yeah, I think the truth of it is that simple is often better than fully optimized. I
Mm,
think I can get into analysis paralysis and what about this? What about that? What about this? And think of all these different factors. But a good plan you can understand and stick with is usually better than a complicated plan that might be perfect in every technical way, but it adds stress and you don't do it. And that's what
Can you
plays
say
into
that
that
again?
balancing
I need you to say that again, because some people can draw up some really complicated A to Z minus F, Y, and G, and you're like, "Oh, okay, so at the end of the day, if I just did this minus that, I get the same number." Please help us in the simplification of it. What does that mean? How does
a
that look
good
like?
plan that you can understand. A good plan you can understand and stick to is almost always better than a complicated plan that meets every technical criteria, but just
Mm,
adds stress and you just won't do it.
simple is better.
Yeah, I think keep it simple, Sally, instead of stupid. Uh, but simplify, simplify, simplify. I think that's what I fully believe. And granted, when you're dealing with affluent families, it's not often easy to simplify things. Sometimes things are just complicated. But
Mm.
still, I believe in fighting for simplicity. Even if it's not the perfect solution, I think that, but that's just a bias of mine. I don't like things that are overly complicated, overly long and expansive. I believe in being concise and keep it simple.
And when you're dealing with affluent, like how many extra zeros do you want at the end of the number? And with all of the complexities, what if it gets you is another $20,000? What is that? Right? So
I might say it's
balancing it out.
insignificant.
Yeah, the significance of it, right? With all like this conversation may actually be costing us more than you're going to save if you went that complicated route in helping them to be able to visualize that. Yeah. That is absolutely awesome. Now, the biggest factor, which I know you touched on in the beginning, which is the family piece. I want to actually talk about trust in two different ways: the family, the
Mhm.
faith, and the culture. But I also want you um, to help us understand how critical it is, or maybe it's not, to trust somebody with your finances. How do you even get to that point? So hit on whichever one you want to hit on first, and I'll circle back.
Yeah, trust is so huge. Like family, faith, and culture and money decisions are like a melting pot. And the reality is, if I were to boil what my industry is to a single point, it's, hey, trust me with your life savings.
Mm,
Hey, trust me with your financial future. And you don't know who I am from Adam. And I think that's why, like, I don't think being a financial advisor is really about the money. I think it's about relationship because all of that is picking. I would even tell a client, or let's say somebody, a prospective client who's looking for an advisor, if I'm not somebody you want to talk to a few times a year or come see, maybe you should find someone else. Like if you don't feel like we vibe, I think you need someone that you trust, that you're not gonna. I think there's a healthy level of questioning and being critical of what a professional tells you, but if you're not gonna trust what I have to say or recommend, you might want to find someone you do trust. And like, there's so much to that. Like family. What if you come from a family that has been played by financial professionals who didn't have the best ethics? What if you come from a faith background where being generous is a major tenet, or being charitable, but you work with an advisor who thinks that's dumb and you should just invest more, or why would you tithe? That's stupid. That's a value difference. And I think too many people go for these big names, or like, this must be a trustworthy place. And but there's things where they don't even respect what you value.
yeah,
Um, so a lot of this matters.
yeah. Once there's something that I saw recently, and I've actually started to witness it play out. And that is especially with women when their spouses die, they become widows.
Mm,
Wealth transitions into the hands of women so significantly that you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've seen in the studies and the research is in the next 5 to 10 years, the majority of the wealth of the world will be in the hands of women because spouses die and now they're in control of what happens to that family's wealth. But the other statistic that I've seen is that when the spouse passes away, the spouse, the widow changes the financial advisor. 80% of the time, they switch financial advisors because they were never involved in the conversation to begin with the first financial advisor that was chosen. So they start having the
mhm.
conversations like, I don't even know who you are, and my values don't even align with yours. So within a few months, the financial advisor that their husband was using for decades is out the door and they've now switched to another one. So, how does that play out? Like, what are you seeing with women in finances, or when a spouse transitions and passes away? What is the impact to the wealth of your clients?
Yeah, it is major. I think it's really difficult because a lot of these things are generational. Some families, they just believe the man's supposed to handle the money, right? Or in some families, the man makes the money, the wife manages the money. Like she's the one who knows all the bills. There's all these different reasons why this happens, but seeing it firsthand, if a spouse passes, if there wasn't a strong enough relationship with both husband and wife, or both partners, if it's just if there wasn't a good enough relationship with both partners, there's a high probability of losing that client. Um, and it's unfortunate. I think there's things that, and it goes a step further. It's not just spouse or the surviving widow. It's also the kids. If
Mm,
both parents pass, the money goes to kids. it's probably an even higher chance, if not the same, of them finding their own advisors. No one wants to use their dad's old advisor or their mom's old advisor, especially if the relationship wasn't built there either. Granted, this isn't in every case, but there is almost like a, I think some of the things that I do knowing this is I just prefer to bring both spouses. Sometimes clients don't even think about this. They'll they'll register for the meeting and not even like forward it to their spouse or just email us directly without attaching their spouse. So I will like actively CC their spouse or actively add their spouse to the invite, even if we decide on the time, or
Mhm.
ask them like, please feel free to bring your spouse. Or and this isn't always just the men. Like sometimes it's the wife is the one who comes to all the
Yes.
meetings and the husband never shows up. So I think it's just us advisors. I've seen advisors create like a almost like a standards or like expectations of clients that you will both be in attendance of meetings and we will reschedule if you're both not present. Not every firm wants to go that far, but
Mm.
I think it's important. You have to think of them as equal parties to these decisions, right? Because one of the things we have to manage, especially to maintain our credentials or my credentials as a CFP, is our fiduciary standard. We are fiduciaries, so we have to act in the best interest of both of you. So sometimes there's conflict. So what if there's a divorce? I can't be both people's advisor anymore. Somebody else has to take the others, right? So there's a lot that goes into this, but I think a major part is that lack of relationship, lack of trust.
And having a trust with your financial advisor in a time, and this is probably, you know how people say, well, in this generation or right now it's so bad, but the reality is it's probably has always been. But we're we're in a season in a life where people really have a difficult time trusting people, and with even talking about having a conversation about money with their friend that they've known for 3 decades, let alone with the
Hmm.
financial advisor that they just met yesterday, even if it was a referral. Like, they don't talk about money, but they so desperately need to because they don't also most people, not all, but most, don't know exactly how to manage it. So how do you
Hmm.
even, begin to have that conversation and begin to, um, align yourself with the values of the family?
I think part of what we do is we do these things called family meetings, where we try to set in advance of like this is the let's just say this is the Ike household. What are things that really matter to you, right? And this is not something you're gonna do in one meeting. This takes time because people have to think about it. They have to flesh it out. Um, what really matters to you? Like, what is priority? If you have these three major goals, but what if you can only handle these two, but not the other one?
Mm.
Which is most important? Because oftentimes, like money is a limited resource. You a lot of times you can't do everything you want or value, so you have to rank them. And I think that's also a difficult conversation, right? Let me bring a prime example. You can either retire or you can fund your child's college. Which would you do? Right? That's a common decision families have to make.
Yeah.
And there's consequences to either the decision. If you choose fund the retirement, your kid is now you're retired and there's pressure on them. I'm not saying it's wrong, but that's just the consequences of that choice. If you choose your retirement, they have to take loans and figure it out. But at least they're not taking care of you. There's pros and cons to each decision, but you could think about almost every life decision. There's different trade-offs like
Yeah. It's called the law of polarity. And I just came across this recently. It's like gravity. But one of my favorite movies is called oh my goodness, of course I'm gonna forget it right this second. I'm gonna remember it though. One of my favorite movies is called Inside Out.
that. Okay.
Okay, the Disney Inside Out. And in the first one, because now there's a second, it was about joy and sadness. And the law of polarity basically says that there's two sides to every coin. You cannot have a coin that's one-sided. When
Mhm.
there's sadness, there's also joy. So every decision has pros and cons, like you said, but it doesn't matter what the pro is, there's always a con. Being wealthy being a high net worth family has its cons, and
Mhm.
passing that legacy to the children, not just the money, but realizing that oftentimes the money can become bondage and a handcuff and not always a blessing. So being wealthy is not 100% all the time. Oh my goodness, this is a pro. There's no con. Money
Yeah.
solves all problems. Maybe not. Do you ever see situations where money is not a blessing in the life of the clients with the high net worth?
I think the simple answer to that is complexity.
Mm,
Um, the more you add to something, the more complexity comes, right? And I do believe that clarity beats complexity, right? And that's some of what we offer clarity and confidence in those situations of complexity. But with more wealth, there's just more things you have to think about or more things you have to offload. And granted, would the average person take that complexity any day? Yes, most often. But you have to point out that not every wealthy person is happy.
mm,
Sometimes people with nothing have the most drink. Um, so it's not really like a right or wrong answer. It's just that's just a reality that comes with more money. There could be more people that want to take advantage of you. With the rise of AI, hacking is becoming even stronger, right? Um, there's just you could be a target of mistrustful things and people as well. So there's a lot more just things that come with it.
wow. And then how do you loop in faith?
Yeah, for clients that have faith traditions and faith values, and also just how I show up to the industry, because um, I am a Christian, and the way I view things, I do believe in stewardship, right? I do believe in managing the gifts you've been given, right? And but that varies by person, right? Some people, like let's use my mom for example. She loves to do medical mission trips. Like if that is part of a life worth living to her and a life of service. So she will go to Congo. She will go to I'm even forgetting countries, but she
Central
goes to
African
different
Republic.
Central African Republic. She's just going to all these different countries in Africa, and she's going and serving. My mom is a nurse and a nurse leader. So and they're organizing trips of many doctors, nurses, and volunteers, and they're going multiple times a year, right? And that's not cheap, but that's something that she values, right? And it's she's serving with her time and her skills. It's not always money, right? And she finds more joy in that than sitting at a resort. That's not my life, but but I do a lot of financial literacy for free. Like I'll go speak at things, and I know some people would rather die than listen to someone talk about money for an hour.
But the faith and aligning it with your personal values is very, very critical. So clients that are dealing with you, prospective clients, who is it that you would want to consider or would want to call you for a financial advisor?
If if you're getting towards that level of complexity where you want to make sure, am I doing this right? My job offers a pension. I'm supposed to pick when to take that pension and which form to take that pension. Should I take it as a single payment? There's a lot of things that come, right? Or you have X million dollars and you're like, I don't know how to do this. I'm afraid. There's so many things. I just think when you get to a point where you're kind of like, I have big decisions to make and I think I need help to do that. I think that's when you call someone like me. And the way my firm typically describes that is in excess of $1 million of investable assets. Not saying that only millionaires need this help. Uh, it's just, I think there are different lanes. There's financial coaches. There are financial therapists, which is beautiful. I think that's a more recent thing. But in the lane that I'm in, we manage wealth and do complex financial planning for people. So it's typically people that have seven figures of assets.
Okay. And I love that you said that too, because income and assets are so variously different. And to have not just assets, but $1 million that you can invest, which means you've got money that you're spending. This is not your entire life savings. This is just, that piece over there that you are investing and having somebody else manage. So that's a really big deal, but that is very clear and simple to understand. What advice would you give to someone that's not there yet, but for them right now, they actually do want to strive for that number?
Yeah, I think I know not everyone likes reading, but I think there are like two or three books that I think are major. And I like them because I can view them as kind of like all in one. You read this and you should be good to make a good enough plan to manage your money well. The first one is called Millionaire Mission by Brian Preston. He's also a certified financial planner like myself. I think he's also a certified public accountant. Um, I think that's a really good book from a professional fiduciary perspective. And it's just step by step. I think he has like 9 steps of things you should do in order. So you'll find wherever you are, you might already be at step 4. That's a good one. Another good book is I Would Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. It sounds scammy, but it's not. It's a very straightforward, brash explanation of what to do with money. And there's another one that's major for couples that's called Money for Couples, also by Ramit Sethi. Um, those three, and there's plenty more books, but it doesn't have to be those. But those are three I typically recommend if someone wants to learn what to do. You have to be careful going on TikTok and YouTube and all these financial influencers. I'm not saying the stuff they tell you is wrong, but sometimes it is. And sometimes it's illegal, the things that I've seen told online. So I
Mm.
would lean more towards CSP professionals, right? Or financial advisors. It's not just CSP, it could be, there's other credentials that are respected in the financial world, but just you have to be careful what sources you're getting advice from. And if it's suitable to you, I think the average person can't really tell what's suitable to them.
Yeah.
And take advantage of the resources. There are a lot of advisors who do free consults, 15-minute consults. Um, so that's just something you can think about. Like they might even give you more tips than I can of like, hey, you're not a good fit for me, but this is something that you could do X, Y, Z.
Yeah. I'm gonna throw another book in there. You wanna guess what it is?
Psychology?
Plant Your Money Seeds. Yes, okay, good guess. All right.
Oh,
Plant Your Money
that
Seeds
too.
by Paluka Lile. We're watching through the stages so that you at least start that conversation, even with yourself, as to where it is that you were planted. And I love that you and I, Ike, are having this conversation. One way that I would frame our conversation here and who you are and who I am is by looking at a house, okay? And you help people put the roof on their house, building the wealth, growing it, the complexities of it. I help people lay the foundation, developing the habits, identifying who they are, where is it that they want their money to go. But in both areas, you're helping them dream about what's next with their finances, and I'm helping them dream about that next step too, which is always very beautiful. But one thing that I find, and I want you to speak to this, one thing that I find is that people who have not yet even laid a foundation, they don't have the money habits. They're dealing with whether it's debt or it's simply a lot of uncertainty, a lack of knowledge about money.
Mhm,
They want a financial advisor to manage their portfolio book of business. And it could be a little less than 500,000. It could be a lot, but they haven't actually developed the habits themselves, which
mhm,
could also lead to them being taken advantage of, kind of like athletes, right? Where it's like, oh my goodness, I
mhm,
just came into all this money and they have somebody else managing it, but they're not supervising. They don't know enough to determine whether or not that person is doing the right thing with their finances. So, how do you speak to that about laying the right foundation and then getting to the point where, yes, you can invest with a financial advisor and have somebody else come in and support you?
yeah, I believe that there are steps to this, right? I think if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you're going to read books like I did and get pretty far by yourself and get to a point where, okay, I can, I think it's time to find an advisor to help me manage this or make sure I'm doing things right. Sometimes people come just to get a check, like, that's my second opinion. This is what I'm doing. Is this okay? That's
Yeah.
fine too, right? But I do believe there are steps to this. Like, I think if you're not the kind of person to read a book or listen to an audiobook on how to build that foundation's habits and just go to implementing, it might be worth hiring someone like hand in hand consulting to help you build that foundation and build those habits, right? I think there's a good pipeline of financial coach to advisor or financial coach to do it yourselfer because I have to be honest, I am not a cheap solution. I think sometimes there are other options, right? If you're a do it yourselfer, I am a big fan of things like robo advisors. If you don't know how to pick your investments, there are solutions there already at a low cost, right? They cost a fraction of what a financial advisor costs. It's just you won't be able to ask questions about the complexity. You'll just have to
Right.
trust that they're doing it, right. So there's trade-offs to everything. You get a quarter of the price for some of the solutions. So, but that's something that you can use. Like if you are someone who's building those habits, but you still want to invest as you're growing, there are solutions like robo advisors and different things. Right. I'm not here to give investment advice, it's educational, but there are different things to think about.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about the dishwasher situation. Yes, you can get a dishwasher and it'll free you up with time and energy, and you can utilize that time to do something else. Or you can get really good at washing your own dishes, and then you can evaluate what's a clean dish, what's your standard, etc. So there's so many different things. Or you can get your child to wash the dishes. There's a lot of different things that you can do. But at least to be aware of what the options are, increasing in knowledge, a book, a coach, an advisor, different layers, do it yourself, but in all the layers, by the way, you are involved. Do not
Mhm.
tune out. Do not put it off to somebody else. I think you would agree, and not check in and not look at it. You've got to be involved with your money, no matter what stage you're in. So, Ike, is there any one thing you want the listeners to take away from this call? From this podcast?
I think I want you, whoever's listening, um, set up a life where your money supports the life that you actually want. And if there's one thing, even if it's just a startup of a plan, you want to have something good enough that you follow that fits your real life. Um, keep it simple. Just get started.
Keep it simple. Thank you for spending time with me and Ike. If something in today's conversation spoke to you, don't just listen. Take one action, one small step, one seed planted, because that's how transformation begins. I am Auntie Foluke with Hand in Hand Consulting. Today, plan tomorrow. Like one of the things that our parents had as an advantage, a pro, is that their generation coming into the United States of America as immigrants, they had hustle, they had a drive, they had initiative, they had a purpose, and that was for their kids to not struggle like they struggled. So, what do you say to the affluent who they have everything and now they've got enough for their children and their children's children? What do they need to pass on to these children?
I think the way it usually lands is make sure they have some skin in the game. I think that's usually the way it lands for clients is so if they're going to college, yes, you plan to pay it all, but let them open the loan
Mhm.
and don't let them know you're going to pay it off. And this is not for everybody, but some people they do things like this where they have their kids do the loan, or if you're going to buy your kid their first car, make them save up half of it and you'll match what they save. Right? There's different things that you can do to make sure kids have skin in the game because I think if you have the privilege to help your kids. But I just think there needs to be an element of them knowing that it costs something,
Mm.
and they have to put some effort or work towards it. So I think skin, and you can be creative with that. Like, just the main theme is make sure there's some skin in the game.
Right. There's this imagery of an eagle in the egg, and when it's being born, takes a really long time, days, maybe even a week or so to get out of the shell, to, like, break free. And there's this story, I don't know if it's real or not, but there is a story of, a person who decided to help an eagle. And so
Mm,
as the eagle was trying to break out of the shell, he would pull off the shell and pull off the shell like, "Oh, no, that's just too hard. Let me make it easier by taking the shell off." And when the eagle finally, was out of the shell, it turns out it couldn't fly.
mm,
And when you have an eagle that did not do the work in the beginning, all of that work helped to strengthen its wings. But when somebody else did that work for him, for the eagle was not able to do and reach its purpose of flying. And I think when it comes to raising children and parenting, if we take the struggle off of them, we may think we're helping, right? Like, hey, if
mhm,
you've got the ability to help your kids and give them money, great. But is it really help? Is it helping them in the long run when they are no longer able to fly because they didn't develop the muscles? They didn't develop the perseverance. They didn't develop the stamina. They didn't have the difficulties and the struggle and the ability to get past it.
mhm.
Now they have all this money, but they don't have the character to match to be able to do the right things with the money. They can't fly. And too often, 2, 3 generations, sometimes it doesn't even make it to the 3rd generation, that money is spent.
Mhm.
You literally just used your entire life building all this wealth for your children, and they spent their entire life spending it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's the same thing with the teach someone how to fish or give them a fish, right? And but that's and I think there's ways around this too for affluent families and paying in advance, right? Like there are language you can have written into trusts, right?
Yes.
There are trusts that we call revocable or irrevocable.
Yes.
Sometimes people use things like irrevocable trust that cannot be changed. So this is left over for the next generation. This is left over for my kids and my grandkids, and there's complexity to it, but there's reasons for all of it, right? And there's trust meant for people who have mixed families. This is for my kids from my first met. Like, there's all these complexities to this that like the average person doesn't even think about. But these are the reasons for it, right? If people know that this can all be squandered, let me write provisions to make sure it won't be, or you can only take this percent of the income every year and nothing more, right? So there's different things that people can do to prevent those things, but
Yeah.
hopefully you can just teach the ethics and the work.
Absolutely. So that way the wealth is a blessing.